The narrative for the HBAR really could not be any better. We've gone from number 50 on the CoinMarketCap list just this past October all the way down into the pre-teens where we sit right now. And some of the tokens that we've passed on our way to get there were almost anointed by some of the crypto powers that be as the next big thing. We're talking about tokens like SUI, which it seemed like they were going to push that one really hard, and they still are pushing it hard. So the fact that HBAR has been able to overcome things like SUI and Aptos and AVAX is really impressive. And then it's all of the different narratives that the HBAR is hitting on. We have the US coin narrative, and then we have the Dino coin and utility narrative as well. And one of the things that we saw almost as a liability or an issue in years past, and understandably so, the fact that nobody had heard about Hedera, nobody had heard about the HBAR, is almost becoming a benefit right now because it's the new exciting thing. It's like a brand new coin for a lot of the people out there, and then they get to go down the different rabbit holes, all of the different utility that is out there for the HBAR. And once they realize what has actually been built on this network, it is absolutely mind-blowing, and it's easy to get really excited about that. And then the last thing is the fact that we are really building the potential on-ramps for Hedera. We've done a good job over the past few years of adding all the necessary exchanges, but that is getting supplemented by now we have the ETFs, and we actually have a few more exchanges coming online as well. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So the first thing we're going to talk about here today is something that just broke this morning, and it has to do with Crypto.com. Crypto.com is going to support on and offboarding of the Hedera version of USDC. This is not only huge for degens who want to enter and exit the Hedera DeFi ecosystem, but as we've mentioned in the past, having efficient on and off ramps for USDC is critical for so many of the businesses, both large and small, that want to leverage USDC and all of its benefits on Hedera. We talk about these businesses week in and week out, the amazing products they're planning on building on Hedera and bringing to market, but they absolutely needed this stablecoin on and off ramp to really meet their full potential. Huge shout out to those at the HBAR Foundation who made this actually come to fruition. I heard Alice Kim, who we've had on in the past, had a huge part in this. So again, huge shout out to Alice Kim. Thank you very much, and a huge round of applause. So the next thing we're going to touch on is, we'll call it a holdout exchange that hadn't listed HBAR, but it looks like it's coming. Kraken made it very clear on Reddit that HBAR is going to be coming to their exchange, so this is going to expose HBAR to even more people out there. We also had some great news on a new kind of on-ramp for HBAR, the ETFs. Greyscale of Bitcoin Trust fame filed the 19B4 for an HBAR ETF, which is obviously huge news. This is why it's so important to have partners like Canary Capital and their trailblazing early filing of the HBAR ETF. And the move up the CoinMarketCap list doesn't hurt in this department either. Grayscale never mentioned HBAR, and other ETF issuers like Van Eck were openly mocking Canary's move. But with HBAR knocking on the door of the top 10, these issuers will not want to be left out. So based on this latest news, Greyscale won't be far behind Canary. It'll be nice to have some options and competition in HBAR-backed ETFs for things like availability and for fees. If you want to do a deeper dive on the ETF front, I did an interview with Gregg Bell of the HBAR Foundation just last week at ETH Denver. And speaking of Greg, he had an interesting post where he said, "When a prime minister calls, you answer. Off to Europe to help another nation state evaluating modernizing its core financial infrastructure with Hedera. Exciting possibilities, the future of finance, HBAR." Now, of course, we don't have any details on this. We don't even know what country he's going to. And while it would be impressive enough to have a finance minister or something like that calling for assistance in something like this, he's saying specifically this is a head of state that wants to have these conversations. So I'm not surprised that Greg is really excited about it, and I hope we get to hear a lot more pretty soon. So the next thing we're going to jump into is back here on the other side of the big lake. We're coming back to the United States. We talked about the crypto strategic reserve here in the United States that has been getting plenty of buzz this week, and we're looking forward to what comes out of the crypto summit here today. Now, throughout the week, we saw various lists of who was going to be attending this summit at the White House, and we didn't see Hedera having any representation on that list. The chief policy officer of Hedera, Nilmini Rubin, said, We're happy to see President Trump convening this first ever crypto summit, bringing together leaders in blockchain and DLT to discuss future digital asset innovation in the United States. Hedera is committed to supporting industry-wide collaboration and engaging with policymakers to drive responsible innovation and meaningful progress for the entire ecosystem. Now, this didn't come from Nilmini, but I have heard grumblings that there's very good contact between the Hedera ecosystem and this new administration. So I wouldn't worry about the fact that we don't have representation at this summit. I think we're going to see some really good collaboration come out of this new government and the Hedera space. So let's now get back into that momentum that Hedera and the HBAR has started to build up and the impact that can have on the social media space and influencers. One thing that caught a lot of people's eye this week was what came out of the Bullbarian network. First, he put out a poll of what additional assets should be added to the U.S. Strategic Crypto Reserve, and HBAR showed up and dominated. He also put out a very positive Hedera-focused video that again showed the power of the strategy we use at this channel to get the word out about Hedera and the HBAR. Most of you watching use this as a one-stop shop for all things Hedera, and keeping HBAR informed is certainly one of our top goals here. But as I've mentioned in the past, part of the strategy is to provide a source for other content creators. I can only get so much reach exclusively covering the Hedera ecosystem. And personally, I can only cover in good conscience the network I think has the most potential. But if I can get larger channels that use a higher growth strategy of covering the entire crypto space, like All In Crypto and the Bullbarian network, to amplify what we discuss, the goal of making people aware of the power of Hedera and the value of the HBAR is going to be achieved. In Paul's Hedera piece, he directly took clips from both my most recent interview with Carlos at CLSQ, as well as the one we did with James at Neuron. Rupert from All In Crypto also highlighted one of our clips from Neuron this week. Far from the first time this has happened, but it's nice to see this content being used as intended. Then we have the other side of the spectrum, Zepp calling out Rand Nooner and pointing out his picks from the spring where he said, I'm buying Sol, you're buying HBAR, I'm buying Arweave, you're buying XRP, I'm buying Ton, you're buying ADA. Zepp quoted that tweet highlighting that since that point, and it's only gotten better since that post, HBAR is up 116% to Solana being flat, Arweave is down 80% to XRP being up over 300%, and Ton is down 55% to Cardano doubling. It just goes to show you shouldn't get cocky when you're dealing with these markets. Now let's jump over to Karate Combat. I caught up with their CTO who addresses some of the questions I've seen floating around out there around their interoperability strategy. Today, we welcome Ethan Arteaga. He is the lead dev there at Karate Combat to talk a little bit about their interoperability play. Ethan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Brendan.
It's absolutely my pleasure. So, Ethan, to start off, can you just explain how the interoperability with AgLayer, the Karate token, and the Karate Combat app is going to work?
Yeah, sure. So AgLayer is for these external tokens on different chains. So, for instance, we have our Ethereum Karate token. And basically the question was, how do we get that token onto the up layer 2 in kind of the simple and ZK manner? And that's where AgLayer comes in. And this will allow us to get other leagues who have their token on different chains via their own sponsorships to also use the up layer 2, which is the Hedera layer 2.
So as far as if somebody, will just use hypothetically, if somebody went on Jupiter and got like a Solana version of the Karate Combat token, how would they then get that over to be able to use that in the Hedera app?
Yeah, so they'll bridge it through AgLayer, and then it'll be staked automatically onto the up layer 2, which will allow them to play the app as any other token would be able to.
So the token itself is going to be, once it's bridged over, be a Hedera token. So most of the activity that's taking place through the app, or all of the activity that's taking place through the app, that's going to be happening on the Hedera network?
Yeah, that's right. So all up layer 2 functionality settles on Hedera. So any token that's staked on there in order to use the app will be settled on Hedera. And then you get all the same advantages of Hedera regardless of the source chain you come from.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, when you say you're bridging it using this AgLayer, when it comes to arbitrage and things like that, are you going to be able to move fairly freely between, one platform and another, from Hedera to Solana or to Polkadot or so forth? So, like, we'll say the token becomes more expensive on one platform and you want to arbitrage that. Is that going to be a fairly easy process?
Yeah, so that's what's great about AgLayer. The bridge times are probably faster than any other technology that exists, and it doesn't require having liquidity on the other side of a separate chain. And that's what really gives us the kind of motivation to use AgLayer versus kind of these other solutions that exist.
So the next thing I kind of want to get into is where this supply is coming from. Of course, originally we had the Hedera supply, we had the Ethereum supply, and I'm just kind of wondering these other platforms. I know we're going to be looking at Solana, getting them on board, Polkadot, and so forth. Where's the supply where these tokens are going to be minted? Where's that going to come from?
So it depends on how you get them on Solana. So for instance, for our Solana Karate, that comes from Ethereum, and that's bridged over using dBridge. So that's wrapped. On in terms of the on the up layer two, all those tokens that exist and will be ported from AgLayer, they're all wrapped on the layer two using an HTS wrap token.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense as well. So we pretty much covered the stuff with the interoperability. I think you answered the questions that we need. Is there anything else that's going on in the karate universe that you're excited about? That could be on the tech side. That could be on, I know you're getting a new stadium. Is there anything else
Yeah,
that you're
yeah.
looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean the stadium's great. That's the Bonk Stadium. We're super excited for that. We'll be able to have more events. And then just on the layer two side, still talking with partners and having them create their own infrastructure on the up layer two. So that's very exciting. We're talking to a lot of these other leagues that are also excited to build on up layer two and have their own up only gaming platforms. So yeah, it's super exciting.
Oh, that's exciting. So, Ethan, I appreciate you coming on here today. There was just some questions that were floating around out there about how this was all going to work. So we appreciate it and continue all your good work there at Karate.
Yeah, feel free to have me anytime.
So the usage of Karate Combat Up Only Gaming is staying at an elevated level, and it's good to hear that that utility and network usage is going to stay on Hedera. So now we're going to move over to my own personal mint, the Bullbarians. We had it just a couple weeks ago, and it was a smashing success. I have to give a heartfelt thank you to everybody that participated. It is a huge help to the channel. We had the main mint of the first series on February 22nd, and that was 250 pieces. Then another smaller one to showcase Kabila at HederaCon on February 25th. The first one sold out in about a half an hour, and the second one sold out in just over a minute. I immediately opened up the token gated world and have been putting out early content in there on a regular basis. Late last night, I interviewed Effie. She is the CEO of AUDD, the Australian stablecoin. I know there's been an awful lot of excitement about that. There was no way that I was going to be able to edit that for today's show, so that's going to have to wait until next week's weekly update, except for the Bullbarians out there. They're going to be able to get early access probably early next week. So it'll be good for token holders to see that a little bit early. And if anyone else out there wants to get in on this early content, there's a few Bullbarians listed just over the mint price on Centex secondary market and a couple on Kabila that are close to the mint price as well. And speaking of this HBAR bull token gated world, of course it's powered by Galaxy, and I caught up with Solo Cisse. He's the CEO over at Galaxy at Karate Combat 53 just last week. So we've been at HederaCon this week, we were at ETH Denver, and now we're at Karate Combat 53, having an absolute blast. I was able to get in the pit earlier tonight with Postmaster, an absolute blast. Right now it's exclusively posted to KC Social, but I've been having all kinds of fun with the different worlds that we have on Galaxy. I have my new HBAR Bull world, we have KC Social. Let us know how it's going, Solo. And we have Solo here. He is the CEO there at Galaxy. How are things in general going with your worlds?
They're going great. We're super excited. I mean, we couldn't ask for more from the community. The reality is, Worlds is a tool for everyone, and really seeing the market and people like yourself and how you can mobilize any sort of group behind any sort of idea. Any sort of collective, it's a really powerful message of ownership that we can sell nowadays, and we're really excited about how that expands far beyond the Hederaverse, the crypto sphere, and keep going out. And we're really excited about those various use cases that continue to surprise us. It was a pleasant surprise to see you even doing all what you're doing with HBAR, with HBAR Bull World. Or in general, and so we're really excited about the possibilities.
Well, we started first with KC Social, which is completely open. Anybody can join. I think there's 2,200 people that are right now in the KC Social world, but I wanted to try something a little bit different. I wanted to see if we could create a token-gated world that is catered just to people that are in my community. So we have the Bullbarians. They're just NFTs that I created in the space. Had some help from an artist in the space. Been working with Kabila. They helped me with the launch. I wanted to manage my community through the world. Later on, I want to do another launch with KiloScribe, and then I want to do another launch with Syntax. So I want to spread things around, but what I'm really excited about is being able to work with a team like yours at Galaxy to really figure out how we can make a token-gated world like this, take them to the next level, and how we can interact. So far, what I've been doing is I had an interview with CLSQ, so Transactional Internet of Things, and I posted that 2 days early as soon as I had my mint. I had a few people come in there, we checked that out. The second one I did was I did a live Shark Bites at HederaCon with Rob. We had people coming in live and walking through it, and then I just did another one here tonight. So I'm giving people early content, and now I want to start to brainstorm with these teams to figure out what else we can do. So, you know, things like doing quick live streams or interactions, how we can do all that with a token-gated world. It's going to be an absolute blast to explore that with your team. Any other thoughts from you, Solo, on what we could possibly do with this?
I mean, got a lot of thoughts, but you know, most importantly, I know, right? Most importantly, I think we're super excited about the opportunities that really can arise with, you know, token-gated worlds, providing utility to on-chain assets, right? You know, a bunch of, you know, the problem with digital assets at this point is they really just live in a wallet. And what we really want to do is give life to those assets. And inside Galaxy, inside Worlds, they can have the appropriate utility that that creator of that token is able to, you know, provide to that community, and really serve as that utility, that application layer or that operating system that Web3 is so dire needed.
Well, one of the other things that I realized really early on is, you know, you have social apps all over the place, but you don't have Web3 native social apps. And that's what you want to do. You want to take these Galaxy and do Web3 things. So that's things with NFTs and tokens and engaging with that exchange of value. I know you've been thinking about this a lot. I want to see if you have any ideas for me of what I could do with the HBAR Bull world, or if we want to talk about an open world KC Social.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think with KC Social, obviously vibrant community, one of the best communities in all of sports.
Yeah.
Finding ways to gamify that experience, take the fight outside of the fight, right? And so after all of these events, how do we keep the energy up in between events? I mean, that's really what KC Social is designed to be, is that forum for that excitement, so that once the events are over, we can continue to sustain that and run into it. With HBAR Bull World, very interesting. I mean, you're the creator. The beauty of it is, you know, we want to create an open environment and create the tools that creators really need to be able to, you know, really, you know, do the most that they possibly can with all the digital assets that we so love. And so, you know, really excited to see what you can do with it. Maybe more chat rooms, find ways to get people buzzing and chatting about HBAR during the day at all times of the day, you know. We're super excited about chat being reformed and refactored. We're going to have an update with that very soon. And we really want people to spend a lot of their times connecting with their friends and community members and really enjoying the platform that we built.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give a shout out to everybody else out there, because I've kind of created the brand. I have the HBAR Bull brand, and what I want from the rest of the community is, how can you leverage that brand? So you might have some great ideas, you might have some great skills, but you don't have the brand. So I can lend you my brand, and we can make that HBAR Bull world that much more engaging with all kinds of different content that leverages everything else that we have. So either way, Solo, I appreciate you coming here today and talking to us. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you.
Solo is definitely one of my favorite people in the space. It was great to catch up with him face to face. Now we're going to shift gears here a fair amount. We're going to get into DePIN. I want to give a huge shout out and congratulations to Neuron. The user interface platform for the Neuron technology is 4D Sky, and they put out a post saying, "It's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's a brand new open source flight information display freshly installed in a UK airport powered by Neuron World and Hedera." The idea that air traffic control was powered by a man with binoculars until very recently is madness. So we just put out a video a few days ago talking about Neuron getting that business with the UK government, and here we have that technology already being installed in the airports. Now, as promised, I brought in an expert. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Chain GPT, but I didn't get into the details of the integration with Hedera, so I grabbed Jay Cool, who is all over the AI space and Hedera. So let's listen to what he has to say. Jay, welcome back. It looks like you're going to be my go-to guy when it comes to the intersection of Hedera and all things AI. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, and that's an honorific title to have. I think definitely a big part of my role now, especially in developer relations, is spearheading the AI awareness. And there's some really positive news which has been developed internally at HBAR, but also some of the external integrations that have been going on.
Well, I can tell that you're passionate about it, so it's fun to talk to you. So, Jay, can you start off just explaining the Hedera integration with Chain GPT?
Of course. So Chain GPT, if you don't know, they're a really, really big multi-chain EVM agnostic protocol, which has been, they've got support with Ethereum and all of the other main EVM chains. There was some recently really great news, which was announced by the HBAR Foundation, that they've actually integrated with Hedera as well. So they've got a few different services. I'm looking at sort of my screen now. They've got a Web3 AI chatbot, other AI generated news, which is more generic. You don't actually need to interact with blockchains for it. But when it gets more exciting is the AI NFT generator that they've integrated with Hedera, as well as the smart contracts generator. So this allows you to generate smart contracts just using a chat interface, as well as audit smart contracts as well. And to the best of my knowledge, they've got their own fine-tuned model, which has been trained on lots of high-quality smart contracts. So they aim to give you a very secure and well scalable smart contract that you can use with low technical skill.
So how do you see this being used by Hedera users and builders?
So I think this is an interesting integration because it's very targeted at the EVM side of the world. And when, for example, I mentioned they have NFT integration earlier, it's NFTs, not the native NFTs, but actually ERC 721, which is the Ethereum standard of NFTs. You can also interact with the dApp using MetaMask. So I think really where this lies is actually a good onboarding tool for people who are on different chains and they're already using platforms like Chain GPT. They already have something like a MetaMask wallet to quickly actually sign up and connect it with Hedera and start interacting with similar tools for them. And I think we'll be able to see some people coming from other ecosystems, trying out NFTs, quickly prototyping, but also people within our ecosystem who maybe have smart contracts which they want to build and interact with can also use it and not necessarily require expert smart contract solidity knowledge.
So when it comes to a developer, how would they go ahead and interact with something like this to be able to create these smart contracts and so forth?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually, I think there's two types of developers nowadays. You've got the traditional developer who's been coding their whole life, sort of like myself. But then also we've got these new, I think they're called vibe coders now, where actually because of these advancements with generative AI, you can actually build these really powerful applications with very little actual programming required, just with prompting. Now, Chain GPT, they do have support for both of these types of developers. And for the first type, they've got APIs and SDKs where you can integrate into their user interface services, which the second type of developer would use. That would be that chatbot interface. So actually, as a developer, you can integrate their services into your white label application. You can integrate the ability for someone to create a smart contract and deploy it, or someone to create an NFT collection, ERC 721. But on the other side, this sort of new type of developer, the vibe coder, those people will be able to interact with Chain GPT via the user interface, connect their wallet, and actually just have a typical chatbot, which is a very, very common user interface nowadays, and use the chatbot to iterate and create some ideas.
So another question, you have that first type of developer who's been doing this their entire life, and they know how to pick out when there's flaws or issues with a code, right? What about this new type of developer that might not have that prior knowledge? Is there issues with AI creating code with flaws and things like that they might use? And how do you prevent that from becoming an issue if it is an issue?
Yeah, it's another brilliant question. I think this is a hot topic of discussion, especially that there is a growing trend now of vibe coders I've been seeing on X. And equally, there's a growing trend of the traditional boomer developers who are saying, oh, I can't wait to start charging $200 an hour to fix their mistakes. I think there's a few mitigations for these for these potentially more risky applications or smart contracts which get developed. I think the first one is we're seeing AI models, especially these state-of-the-art reasoning models. Now, I'm not sure which one Chain GPT has fine-tuned or whatever, but definitely the most common sort of your models like OpenAI's GPT 3.5, 3.50 mini, whatever it's called. X have just come up with a new reasoning model. All of these reasoning models are pretty damn good, and they are definitely better than your average developer. And often we're having average developers who are shipping code. So that, I think, is sort of one argument for this as to why it's not so much of a problem. But I think the other strategy is, okay, as I mentioned earlier, Chain GPT, not only do they have the ability to create smart contracts, but they have another model which is specific for auditing smart contracts. So when you have these two models, one is which is good at creating them net new, and the other one which is good at taking a smart contract and going, here are the risks, here are the issues, you can then actually feed that back into the original model and then reiterate. So I think that's another strategy and mitigation that developers who are maybe not so traditionally skilled to ensure that their applications are meeting specific standards.
Great to hear. All right, so we had a really good discussion there at HederaCon between several of the people that are focusing on AI in the Hedera space. I'm going to have some highlights after this of some of the things that they mentioned, but is there anything else that's going on in that Hedera AI space that you want to highlight before we let you go?
Yeah, totally. So I think the key things which I want to highlight are obviously we've got these external integrations which are being made, your Chain GPTs, but also there's some stuff which we've been building internally. So we have a ELIZA plugin. ELIZA is currently the most popular Web3 AI agent framework. It allows you to create your AI agent with specific tools that it can call, but also it gives it the ability to actually interact with clients like Discord, X, Telegram, and various other ones as well. So that's something which is out there at the moment. If you're a developer, please check it out. I can send you, Brandon, maybe some links that you could share. But if you're a developer and you're looking to build ELIZA plugins with Hedera functionality, for example, the ability to create tokens, transfer tokens, airdrop tokens, all of this sort of stuff that you can do inside of your wallet, you can now do with an ELIZA agent. There's something else that we've built as well, which is our Hedera agent kit, a LangChain agent. So LangChain, similar to ELIZA, it's a framework for building AI agents. And with LangChain, it's good in different aspects. So the way that I describe LangChain and LangGraph, which is their sort of agent framework, is that when you want to build something a bit more customized, maybe you want to integrate it into your wallet or you want to integrate it into your dApp, the LangChain implementation would be more suited for you. But that's also open source. It's ready to use. Again, I'll send you links, Brandon, and hopefully we can get some devs who are watching this to drive some activity towards these frameworks and implementations that are basically ready for developers to start building with. And yeah, that's sort of it at the moment. There's definitely some internal communications between myself and some colleagues at Hashgraph about how can we increase the developer awareness. So definitely you'll be hearing more stuff from me about all of this new stuff and all of these new integrations, all of these new SDKs that you can use and bounties and so on, which will incentivize people to use them too.
Well, I think one of the most exciting things is we're going to allow a much more broad pool of developers, people that may not have even been developers in the past, to really ship some really neat products that are built on top of Hedera. So it's really exciting. This space is going to have plenty to cover, so we're looking forward to having you back as soon as possible, Jay.
Sounds good. And I think just a final quick point from me, I do want to emphasize to all of the people who are watching this, I really am, and we really are as Hashgraph, we're staying at the top, staying at the edge of all of these new AI innovations. So there's some new, I mean, it's almost nowadays, I hate to say it, but ELIZA, which was popular 1 month ago, that's not what's hot anymore. So we are keeping an eye on all of the new features and new sort of protocols which are coming out in the space. There's a really interesting one called MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is kind of a standardized way that agents can communicate with each other. There's also some stuff which we're working with on the community, Hashgraph Online, on inter-agent communication. That's a bit premature for now, but I do want to sort of drop that in to make sure that people know we are really at the top of the game and staying ahead of every single trend.
Well, it's certainly an exciting space. Jay, thanks again.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Now, one thing that Jay missed there, and he wanted me to highlight, was that the HBAR Foundation has specific grants for those that are building with Hedera and AI technology. So if you are building something along that track, make sure you get in touch with the HBAR Foundation. So staying with AI, we still have this 8-hour marathon of a video for HederaCon. It has so much good information in there, but they haven't broken it up yet. And there was a really good section in there around AI that explains some of the stuff that's happening with Equity Lab and Prove AI. So I grabbed a few highlights for that to check out.
Equity Lab focuses on AI governance, which means that we think about how we can express various forms of governance, and those could come from regulations, they could come from company policies, and then we find ways to ensure that it can be, the implementation of that governance is audited and also enforceable. And the amazing thing about the cryptography is that it provides us a way to establish this type of trust that Sham's talking about, but we can do so in a way that is tamper-proof, it's interoperable, and it's privacy-preserving. And as we start to think about the challenges that we have with AI right now, the actual critical question around how we're going to get massive adoption of AI really comes down to this question of how you can ensure that it is properly governed. And if you can establish that type of trust, that means you can start to get into more complicated workflows like agentic workflows that are autonomous and kind of really maximize the full potential of AI. So early innings, but also really exciting proof points that this is working and at scale. So one thing I think it's important to recognize is that Hedera has been on the forefront of enterprise integration with blockchain since the very beginning. I used to joke, and I say this very lovingly, that Hedera would bring kind of the khakis to the blockchain party, right? Because it's a totally different culture to understand how you walk into a Fortune 1000 company and try to explain to them how they're going to take their mission critical systems and bring that on chain. And Hedera was focused like a laser beam on this and hired the talent, developed the technology. And now we're in this incredible moment, and I think we saw that together, in which you have the largest corporations of the world undergoing the most dramatic transformation of their entire existence. Every single one of them is being transformed by AI. And their challenge is that now, as they go through this transformation, they need to establish new forms of business practices and trust that not only can be contained within their own systems, but that they can be interoperably shared with others. Does this sound like a familiar problem, right? We've been dealing with this when Web3 from the very beginning. Solutions like Saga, they are architected fundamentally to be decentralized in order to be able to syndicate trust in and out of these systems. So we've arrived at this moment in which finally all these things have come together, and now we're seeing the largest corporations in the world realizing they have to establish this form of trust. And number two, and this is the hardest part, AI is not like any other type of software that we've had in our history, and specifically open source AI is not like other forms of open source technology. What we've been talking about with something like DeepSeek as an example, which is an open source model, it presents massive risks of an order of magnitude that we have not even yet understood. And so therefore we can't just go as business as usual. We need to deploy proper safeguards, and we're seeing the emergence of what's being called sovereign AI systems. And this is where you have governments and the cloud providers and others coming together to say, we're going to have principles in which we're going to enact sovereign guidelines to ensure that when AI is now operating in this country, that it abides by the laws of that country. Now, we can have a discussion about the appropriateness of that and what it could do to innovation. I'm all for that discussion. Nonetheless, it's a fact of life at the moment. And so what you get with the verifiability is not just the interop between a supply chain of different actors using AI, but you also have the ability to prove that you've met the compliance requirements of a sovereign AI framework. And I can say with full confidence that the preparation, the culture, the thinking that Hedera has had from its very beginning is what's equipped it to be in the perfect position to execute on that. We're really excited about verifiable compute. We launched a white paper in December with Intel and NVIDIA. It's going to scale to the cloud in Q2 and onwards. And we just can't wait because we know that enterprises are desperate for this type of solution. And really the last barrier is the hyperscalers adopting that and then getting out to the decentralized, the deep infrastructure layer. So yeah, this is the year for verifiable compute, and we're excited to launch that.
So at Prove AI, we're focused on de-risking the development of AI. So, right, one of our core tenets here, right, as a product is to not disturb developers, right? So what we want is for people to develop AI solutions. We want them to partner with third parties who are building on AI, right? And we want to make this whole exchange of risk posture as easy and as frictionless as possible, preferably with no impact to the people who are doing the actual work here. One of our other tenets is show your work, right? So I think there's a big theme here about automation, right? So if we work backwards from the problem, multiple parties need to share, work with each other. We need to share our risk postures with each other. How on earth are you going to do that without showing your work to each other, right? The world of SLAs, I think, worked fine for software development. They don't work well for AI development, right, for a bunch of reasons, right, mainly because there's more things involved, there's high velocity data behind the scenes, things that I think everybody here, right, understands, right? So our solution, right, is designed to have multiple parties log into this, into our solution, define what the risk postures are, right, and that's possibly compliance, it's possibly not compliance related, it doesn't matter, right, it's whatever you as two parties think that you need to have an eye on, right? And then we rely on the automation providers of the world to give us that data so that we have that chain of trust from end to end, right? That's ultimately ultimately securely communicated, right, across parties. And right, for us, we're built entirely on Hedera, right, to make that a reality as our ledger. So the issues around data governance, just who's using data, is one of the biggest problems that have come out from our prospects, right? That's the first problem to solve, and that's what people are worried about. Like within data, though, I think we're trying to solve a very large problem here, right? This is a very large, complicated problem that has existed for decades, right? So at Prove AI, the right first step here is just to figure out, like within the realm of data, right? Do we really have the visibility into how data is being used? Who's doing what, and then can you build on top of this a sort of secure, verifiable trace down to the actor, down to the data set, down to the region, right, on where this data is going, right? The thing is, though, massive problem. First step is the visibility piece, right? Because if you don't have that and you don't have that sort of setup in place, then a lot of these discussions, right, go nowhere. Right, they get confusing, or even worse, you do an exercise once, right? So a very typical problem is hey, I have 10 teams who are each either tuning models or maybe they have some RAG data on some models. I'm scared to death because I don't know what data they're putting into those tuning sets. I don't know where it came from. They're sitting in text files on somebody's desktop, right? This worries me, right? So this is probably a pretty common issue out there, right? So if that's sort of the nearest term problem to address, what we at Prove AI, right, what we're doing is saying, well, let's at least solve that first problem first, right? Let's get people to, to start building kind of data collection and rules that at least surfaces, hey, what are people doing? What models aren't they downloading from Hugging Face? What's going on people's desktops? What are people putting into their cloud, instances? And at least have a, start with the reality, with a grounded truth of, what are people, doing first? From there, the journey is much easier, right? So then building onto that, how do you establish trust all the way down, right, to the appropriate layer that you need to? And then how do you automate this in such a way that you can transmit this trust posture either internally or externally, right? Those become easier to solve once you've sort of set up that initial view. I mean, what excites me most as a technologist, right, is being able to successfully build, right, and build quickly without things getting in my way. Right, so honestly, I mean, there's no specific application or things, right? I just want builders to be able to build, right? Like any good technologist or any good CTO. So what excites me the most about this is just for DLT, right, there's already this infrastructure that exists that's sort of a perfect match for getting compliance and risk out of my hair, right, so I don't have to worry about it, right? So that's what developers typically want. That's what certainly my team wants, and that's what I want. I want to be able to do stuff. And I just don't want to hear about what about the risks, what about the compliance, what about all of this other stuff. I want it to be, done. I want to be do my stuff and not worrying about it, which is roughly where we've gotten to with cloud software, right? It took us a while, right? And in the beginning, there was knee-jerk reactions of, oh no, how dare you deploy software so quickly, right? We're past that, right? We got past that, right? Now we have new building blocks, lots of complication, right? We want to get to that same space. And what I get so excited about is just like there's a tool right in front of us. There's infrastructure right in front of us, DLT. That's the perfect match for allowing us to be able to transmit stuff to each other, to multiple parties, log stuff in real time, and do that verifiability that all of my esteemed panelists have been talking about here, right, without having to do any additional work. I don't have to build anything, right? So that's what excites me the most. It's just there's this great technology that's right here that allows us to build unencumbered, and all we have to do is figure out how to use it and log stuff to it. So, awesome. Right, I'm very happy.
We do have another exchange that's also adding some support for Hedera. WooFi highlighted a new HBAR futures listing. They said trade HBAR via both EVM and Solana with up to 10 times leverage on WooFi Pro. Though I don't use leverage that much, actually I don't use leverage at all when it comes to crypto, I do think it's good for teams like WooFi to make these kind of features available, and we know there's an awful lot of demand out there for it. So we're going to shift gears here again. We're going to get into Hedera Gaming. I represented Earthlings at both HederaCon and at ETH Denver. I love that team. I love everything they're coming out with, and they have a new trailer, and we know that everything they come out with is absolutely beautiful, so let's check it out. All right, and with that, let's jump into some network analysis. We had seen an uptick a few days ago, and we're averaging in the teens as far as transactions per second on the Hedera network. This pulled back a little on average, but when I looked at Hashpoint research, we were cruising along in the 20s. Over the past week, we had over 45,000 accounts created, 700,000 NFT transfers, 30,000 fungible token transfers, and 1.1 million smart contract calls. Now let's take a look at the crypto and HBAR markets. Bitcoin is down 1.5% on the day, but up 4% on the week to 87,600. HBAR is up slightly on the day and 12% on the week to just about 24 cents at the time of recording. we still need to push through and hold 26 cents for that next leg up. I like that it looks like we're creating some support around 22 cents as well. I think a lot of people were looking for the crypto summit as a sell the event scenario, and it looks like that played out a little today, but generally I think that's a mistake. I think this bull run has plenty of legs left. Now, I talked about this a little bit in the solo interview. I had so much fun down there at Karate Combat 53. One of the things that I managed to do was get in the pit and roll around a little bit with Postmaster. We know Postmaster, very involved in this space. He fought in the Influencer Fight Club with Karate Combat, and he's an absolute incredible athlete. Now, I started to guess here after about 30 seconds. We were pretty evenly matched for that 30 seconds, but if it went much longer, he was certainly going to have me. And of course, if we would have thrown strikes in there, that would have been an issue as well, but it felt really good to get out there. I felt like I still had it, and I want to get into a little bit better shape so I can do a little bit more of this in the future. And while we're on Karate Combat, we heard some huge news. Number one, the Craig Jones Invitational, that is a grappling organization, has teamed up with Karate Combat to do events together. They are going to be doing up-only gaming around this, and the Craig Jones Invitational is absolutely huge in the grappling world, and we've found out that the pit is perfect for jiu-jitsu and grappling. So that's going to be fun to watch how that plays out. In addition, we got some information around the tokenomics for the Karate token. Now, to make it sustainable around the Karate Combat events, we didn't know if they were going to use inflation or some other mechanism. One of the things that you've heard me say over and over again is I hope that they would use sponsorship to continue to fund these events. And that's exactly what we're going to see. They want to use sponsorship to fund up-only gaming for all the Karate Combat events, and I'm sure some other stuff as well. This is huge, right? For the Karate token holders, it's massive. So I love to see that. Looking forward to next week, I want to try to get Only LARPing on to talk about this a little bit more. I also am planning on getting Impart Live on. I talked to them this past week. They're going to post my interview with them next week, and I'm going to try to get them on my show as well. They are all about empowering creators, and of course, we're big into that in the Hedera space. In addition, I'm of course going to post that interview that I did with AUDD and Effie. That's going to be a great interview, and I'm going to get Rob back for some shark bites. So if you have any questions for Rob, go ahead and drop those down in the comments. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.